It is December 11th, and it's the last Bank of Canada announcement for 2024. My name is Carmen. I'm with the Remax Sea to Sky in Whistler, and with me again is Karen Garrett from Sea to Sky Mortgages. We love our Sea to Sky everything. Thank you for coming back.
You're welcome. Good morning. Hi, I'm just
Good
shifting
morning.
my seat here.
I can't believe this is our fifth episode. This is so great. The last time we talked, it was October and it
Yep.
was a 50 basis point drop. And we talked about how that's not unheard of, but not super common. So here we are today. Talk to me about what happened.
Interestingly, there was a lot of speculation leading up to this meeting. The unemployment numbers came out last week, and we had increased our unemployment numbers from 6.5% to 6.8%. So because of that, there was a lot more speculation that there was going to be a half a point drop as opposed to the quarter point. We always believed there would be at least a quarter, and we were surprised that a second consecutive half a point was on the table. But the numbers are indicating that the Bank of Canada needs to be a bit more aggressive than
Okay.
a quarter point wouldn't quite do at this time. So they've added more stimulant to the economy and dropped it by a half a point. It takes us down to 3.25. And as you mentioned, it's the fifth consecutive drop, which total is 1.75 off the rates when you and I first started in June talking, which gives about $112 and a total savings of about $112 every 100,000 of borrowing since June as a
Which
reduction.
is, it's a big jump from the first time you said, oh, it's only $16 for every 100,000.
Yeah, no, it's great.
Feel like that is going to affect your initial soft landing prediction.
Yes, actually, essentially, the Bank of Canada has a 2% target rate for the soft landing. Currently, the numbers are showing us that we're going to be under that 2% landing based on where they're projecting rates to be. So currently a 3/4 of a point is what they're saying will be by the middle of next year. And it's very likely that we'll be even higher, even more reductions by the end of 2025. Interestingly, the Bank of Canada is the most aggressive country to be dropping rates. So we're the leader in dropping rates. The Fed do meet next week on the 18th, the US Economy Bank of Canada equivalent, and they're expecting to drop a quarter to a half. As you may recall, they dropped a half last time, but there's more positive stimulus in the US at the moment. So quarter point may be in more line than a half there. And I'd be surprised if they drop a half, but they may follow suit to Canada for once.
Right. Way back, I think it was our second meeting, you were talking about how 3 left in 2024, 5 in 20 or 8 in 2025. I think you were predicting 7 or 8 of those would be reductions, 7 or 8 of the 11. So do you
Yeah.
feel differently now about the 8 that will be in 2025?
No, I'm pretty confident that the next meeting is January 29th, and I believe there'll be a quarter point there. The CPI numbers come out next week, and that will be an indicator of if that's likely a quarter point or if they're going to stay the same or possibly a half. But the prediction at the moment isn't a half, it's more of a quarter. And our numbers are showing that we're most likely going to see a quarter point in January. And then the Bank of Canada meets again in March. So it's
Right.
unknown yet. We're too far out for that. But I do think we're going to see 3/4 to 1.25%. Our trajectory is lower. All indicators are proving that the Bank of Canada's and policy changes have worked in a positive way. And so that enforces the need to continue to drop rates to get them to where they want them to ultimately be.
Obviously, this isn't a politics show, and I want to be
No.
careful how we swim around that.
Yes. Yeah.
But there are facts with both the U.S. government changing and potentially the Canadian government changing. Are there like cut and dry things you can talk about that we could anticipate seeing in the next year?
With the announcement of the incoming president and the expectation of higher tariffs between Canada and the US, also we would expect to reciprocate our expenses on the other side when we export. We're going to see the cost of goods costing everybody higher, the consumer higher, the bottom line user. And because of that, I think the inflation numbers will be higher and probably more artificially higher for a little while until we find our pace and setting to our new relationship with the US. And because of that, I think a lot of things either are going to trickle down to being layoffs in Canada, because either the production costs are going to be higher or the export costs are going to be higher, which means the volumes might decrease. We're going to have to find new ways to receive goods and export our goods to other countries. And because of that, until we find our new footing, if in fact the tariffs do become what have been promised, then we're going to see higher inflation numbers. I make the inflation higher going to bring down interest rates. So your question to whether I think the 3/4 of a point is still predicted, as I had mentioned earlier in meetings, I actually do think now we're probably going to be closer to 1.25 to 1.5 by end of 2025 on the variable prime rate reduction.
When we first started talking, people were remortgaging from 2% ish mortgage rates into really high rates, and we were expecting a sort of a panic. Are you feeling that people are calming down now that we've had such a significant drop since June?
I find there's more clients shopping, more clients interested now in what they qualify for, more clients coming back to the variable, where for a very long period of time, the last 18 months, we've been putting a lot of clients in the 3-year fixed, primarily because the 1 and 2 year were quite high relative, and the 3-year seemed to be a nice sweet spot with being able to early renew and take that time for that 3 years for the rates to finally adjust. So what we're finding at the moment is I'm getting a lot more calls with clients engaged in what they qualify for. I'm busier. My November and December have been busier than probably June and July of this year. So the interest rates are finally funneling down to more activity. I think you'll continue to see that into 2025. And then obviously that may relate to higher prices in 2026 or 2027, but I don't think we're going to see higher market values at the moment. It's worth noting there's a couple more changes that are coming into effect December 15th, which will also help the market and help the housing purchasers be able to get into properties. One is that the Bank of Canada, or sorry, the government announced that we could now see 10% down up to a purchase price of 1.5 million, where that was normally 999,000. So that's a nice change. And then the other one is that the first-time buyers can extend their amortization from 25 years to 30 years if they were putting less than 20% down, where that normally only applied to new builds. And then interestingly, earlier than that in September, but the new builds now can go to 1.1 million purchase price without having to pay the property transfer tax. So those things are going to also help, I think, as an overall comfort and stability in the housing market. So I think you're going to see that translate quite nicely in 2025. We had about 20,000 more jobs created, but there was still unemployment went from 6.5 to 6.8. So that meant that even though they had introduced a lot of jobs, there were more jobs that were lost.
Well, just what are the factors to that? Like, why can't we bring our unemployment down?
Well, unemployment speaks directly to the bottom line user costs. So as things are more expensive for the user consumer and people start spending less, buying less products, that translates down the road, or actually it's like a domino effect. So what's happened is, yes, the economy has dropped rates, but it takes a very long time for that to work its way into the bottom line user. Up to 2 years, I was told by Stephen Pulitz of the Bank of Canada, former governor of the Bank of Canada. And so what happens is when we see a rate drop today, some of this may not even finally affect our economy for up to 2 years. So the Bank of Canada is already padding their numbers by their projections of where they see the CPI is going to be, or the GDP is going to be, and when they don't, or unemployment, and when they miss those targets, that's when it causes us to lower rates or raise rates. Bank of Canada forecasted the GDP to be 1.5%, and it came in at 1%, as an example. So 18 months ago, they were predicting at this time we would see a 1.5% growth, and we've only seen a 1% growth. So although there's growth, there's things that are moving positively. The Bank of Canada has already decided where they feel those are going to land. And when we miss those numbers, that's why we see reductions in interest rates, or raising interest rates for that same reason. We're having a declining labor market, and they're showing signs of stagnation. So they're concerned about that. And the health of the economy in general was the message of today, was the health of the economy. Okay. So they're still trying to keep that stimulus going, and it's tough because all the other factors are now coming back into play. And I feel that we're going to see that into 2025.
Thank you very much.
You're
Have
welcome,
a
love.
great day. Happy holidays. I'll see maybe if we'll bump into each other over the holidays. That would be great. Or maybe in the new year when things are a little less
Yeah.
crazy, and then I'll see you
Okay.
on the 29th.
Bye, love. Have a safe trip.
Okay, bye. Thank you.
Bye. You're
Bye.
welcome.